time to trigger the nuclear option. And the nuclear option, of course, is this hole in the filibuster, or is it's the process of blowing a hole in the filibuster. The filibuster started back in arguably, it was set up in 1806 when Vice President Aaron Burr suggested that that the Senate make a small change in their rules for ending debate. It didn't really get used until 1937 when John C. Calhoun, the father of the Confederacy, came into the Senate. And the year earlier, in 1836, the House had passed what is referred to as the gag rule, that no member of the House could speak of slavery on the floor of the House. Over in the Senate, the way they handled that was if you brought any legislation that had to do with ending slavery or modifying slavery in any way, then it would be filibustered. And what the filibuster did, starting in 1837, is it stopped all Senate activity. Just shut the Senate down. And so the only way to stop the filibuster from 1837 until 1917, the only way to stop the filibuster was to withdraw the legislation, which is what they did. And it was used principally prior to the Civil War for legislation having to do with slavery, post-Civil War for mostly civil rights legislation, until 1917. In 1917, Woodrow Wilson was trying to prepare this country for war. Our merchant ships were being attacked by German submarines, and Wilson wanted Congress to pass a law appropriating money to help the merchant marine fleet, basically the commercial shippers, put depth charges on the sides of their boats so that they could drop them into the water and blow up submarines if they were under attack. It would have involved some money. And there was this guy by the name of Kitchen, who was a fulminant. Claude Kitchen was his name. He was a Democrat in the House from North Carolina. And he was a fanatic white supremacist. And he was basically still fighting the Civil War. And he didn't want any more money to go to Wall Street, because back then they were still blaming Wall Street for the Civil War in the South. I mean, they still do in the South. And so he filibustered this in the Senate. He and a small friend, bunch of his friends, which led to the March 5th, 1917 New York Times front page, all caps, screaming headline, "Armed ship bill beaten. President issues a statement saying we are made helpless and contemptible without remedy until the Senate amends its rules. 33 senators already pledged to end obstruction." And, Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson, said the Senate of the United States is the only legislative body in the world which cannot act when its majority is ready for action. A little group of willful men representing no opinion but their own have rendered the great government of the United States helpless and contemptible. So one of the senators, a guy from Montana, his name was Thomas Walsh, he came up with an idea. And he said basically, the Constitution says that there's some things that the Senate has to do. And so we have to be able to break a filibuster so that we can conduct the business of the Senate. So let's make a rule that if 2/3 of the senators vote to stop the filibuster, the bill doesn't have to be withdrawn, the filibuster just dies. And about a week later, the Senate, this is in March of 1917, about a week later, the Senate adopted that bill. They changed the bill, and that's where the supermajority came from. It's been changed over the years. Now it's down to 60 votes. It was 66 votes for a while, or the equivalent of it in 1917. And he called that the constitutional option, because it meant that the Senate could continue to do the business that it was mandated to do under the Constitution. Fast forward to 1980. And in 1980, Senate Majority Leader Howard Baker said, we really need to take this constitutional amendment and use it to exclude taxing and spending legislation. And so thus we got reconciliation, budget reconciliation. Woodrow Wilson overcame the filibuster, with a little help from this one senator, Thomas Walsh, who came up with the constitutional option. So let's let 2/3 of the senators overcome the filibuster. Then in 1980, Howard Baker was the Senate Majority Leader, and he added what we today refer to as budget reconciliation. And his rationale was that because spending money is part of the constitutional requirement of the Senate, that, within certain limits, Congress should be able to raise taxes or lower taxes for that matter. In fact, it was Howard Baker wanted to use it to lower taxes. and change spending levels without facing a filibuster with just a simple majority. And in fact, this budget reconciliation was used aggressively by the Reagan administration in the years following this 1980 change. So then, in 2003, when Democrats were filibustering George W. Bush's judges, then Majority Leader Trent Lott came up and said, you know, this thing, we're not going to call it the constitutional option anymore. We're going to call it the nuclear option. And it should be expanded to include judges. He didn't get his way, although they did start referring to it as the nuclear option instead of the constitutional option in 2003. But it wasn't until November 21st, 2013 that Harry Reid changed the Senate rules to say that, and this is because McConnell was filibustering virtually all of President Obama's judicial nominees. And so he said, no, you can't filibuster judicial nominees anymore. That's in the Constitution. That's something we're supposed to do. And then in 2017, in April of 2017, Mitch McConnell did the same thing with the Supreme Court after the Democrats said that they were going to filibuster Neil Gorsuch. So now we have two holes in the filibuster. Well, three, arguably. The first one is that you can overcome a filibuster with a 2/3 vote. That's 1917. Then you've got the 2013, then you've got the 1980. You can do budget reconciliation. You can overcome a filibuster if it's just about taxing and spending. And then we have the 2013, 2017 holes that you can also overcome a filibuster if it has to do with judicial nominations for federal benches or the Supreme Court. So I'm saying it's time to add now another one, a final hole, as it were, in the filibuster. And that is that if a piece of legislation comes forward that has to do with voting rights, that should not be subject to filibuster either. And the reason why is because voting is the foundation of everything. I mean, this is what Thomas Paine said about voting in 1795. He said, the true and only basis of representation, of representative government, is equality of rights. Every man has a right to one vote. To take away this right is to reduce a man to slavery, for slavery consists in being subject to the will of another, and he that has not a vote in the election of representatives is in this case. The proposal, therefore, to disenfranchise any class of men is as criminal as the proposal to take away property. Hamilton, of course, was also an opponent of slavery. And then Jim Clyburn. Jim Clyburn just came out and said, you know, we need to get rid of the filibuster for constitutional issues, just as we've done it for budget issues. If you want to argue how high a wall should be or whether you should build it, those are issues that are political. But nobody should filibuster anybody's constitutional rights, said Congressman Jim Clyburn. He said, we've done it for the budget and a reconciliation. And he said it's much better word to apply to constitutional issues than it is to the budget. I completely agree with him. I think it's time for Senator Schumer to say, you know, the right to vote is in the Constitution. Voting rights are something that we will no longer allow to be filibustered. Now, I realize it's a two-edged sword, because if they pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, then when the Republicans take control of the Senate and the House, and there's a possibility of that happening, then they could simply pass a law saying, we're going to take that Texas law or the Georgia law, and, you know, I mean, they could just reverse it, right? But let them try. Let them try. I'm willing to take the chance. I think the politics here are on our side. I think what is right is on our side. And I don't see this as something that we should be wringing our hands over. I think they need to get on with it.